Real estate agents, the home inspection is on, and there's a bunch of red marks on it. We got to get through what you should be doing with that. We're here with Jarett Vogler. I said it wrong, even though I know how to say it. Jarett Vogler from Legacy Home Inspections. Jarett, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me.
I can't believe I screwed up your name, even though we just went through that.
Oh, good.
Hey, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So let's jump into it. The biggest fear for a buyer and even bigger for the buyer's agent is when they get that report.
Yeah.
There's always red marks on it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's intimidating. Everybody thinks, the home inspector is going to tear this property apart and, oh gosh, what are they going to find? And, is it going to fall down? That kind of thing. And it's not really the purpose of a home inspection. We're there to provide a tool. We're not there to, pass judgment on a house. Our inspection report isn't a verdict on the house, and we're not there to condemn any property. We're there to provide a tool.
The challenge is it's in writing.
Yep.
And it's red marks. And you have a home buyer who may have been there through the process, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
You always recommend they show up.
Oh yeah. We want them to come. Some clients want to come for the entire inspection. They want to, shadow us and ask questions while we go through it. Some just want to come for the last 30 minutes and have a little debrief face to face with us. We encourage that at the very least. We do have other clients, that they've been through the process before. They just want to look at the report when it's published and they don't want to have any interest in coming. But we encourage people to come and have a chat with us because we get to alleviate a lot of those concerns. It's easier to manage that conversation face to face rather than through, phone calls afterwards or email or something like that.
So what advice do you have for a real estate agent who is working with a client who's looking at that report and they're starting to freak out?
Yeah. So my biggest advice, and I tell all of my clients this, you can't freak out until I freak out. When I freak out, that's when we have a problem. So that kind of gives a chuckle and, alleviates some of the tension in the room when I say something like that. And it is true, having done so many inspections, I've seen everything. So I know when something's going to be a real issue and when something's going to be delayed maintenance. Every house has delayed maintenance.
Yeah. How would you say an agent should prepare their client going into this?
The biggest thing is just have that initial conversation with them about home inspections, about the process, about what we're going to find. And experienced agents know this already. They do have those conversations, and I find that the clients are better prepared in that instance for having that tough conversation with me, even though I try to make it not as tough.
Right. You've been in hundreds of homes now.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest thing you've seen that had you scratching your head?
I've probably got two crazy kind of shocking stories to tell you. They both happened last year. The first one, I walked into a crawl space. It was a walk-in crawl space area, and all the floor joists were painted silver. There's only two reasons why you do that. You either had a mold problem, and it was to treat mold, or you had a fire, and it was to take care of the burn smell after the fire's been fixed. And I walked in, I'm staring at all these floor joists, and I immediately called the agent, and I asked her, hey, did they tell you about the fire they had in the crawl space? No, what's going on? And I'm going through showing her what's going on. The listing agent got involved with the three-way phone call, said straight to my face, I don't believe you. And I'm holding ash in my hand, charred wood in my hand. And I said, okay, picture's coming, to you. And I guess the bottom of the fireplace had fallen out at some point. It wasn't supported properly or something, and it dumped into the crawl space, and it lit the crawl space on fire.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was probably one of the craziest things I've ever seen. The other one was a mobile home. It was an RV trailer that they had built a double wide pier and beam house around. And it was so cleverly disguised that you couldn't tell from the street that it was still a part of it was still a travel trailer. And what kind of clued me in was I was standing in the kitchen area and looking down this hallway. And if you've ever been in an RV trailer, these hallways are really, really small. And so this hallway didn't look the right size to me. And so I go over to the attic scuttle hall and I poke my head up. And sure enough, I'm looking at the roof of the RV trailer. It ripped the side off of and built this house around. And then I get in the crawl space, and sure enough, it's still got the axles and the tires attached. It was never transferred to real property. And that one, I did call the agent on that one too. The only time I've ever called an agent and said, your clients aren't going to buy this house, not because they don't want it, but because the lender's not going to give them the money to do it because it hasn't been transferred to real property. Yeah.
Wow. So much for disclosures, huh?
Right. Yeah. Disclose, disclose, disclose. No disclosures on either one of those.
So, like going back to those are obviously deal breakers.
Yeah.
So, when there's just light maintenance stuff, do you get involved in how the agent should be handling this, or do you kind of just step back and pass it on?
We definitely try to tap into how a little bit. I think a lot of times the agents and the clients are really looking to us to have that conversation. And we do that very well in our debriefs, in that face-to-face conversation. I think we do a pretty good job of that. And the agents themselves, and the ones that work with us, they're very familiar with our process. And so they've had enough experience too that they can have some of those conversations as well.
Have you seen the ego and destroy their deal if by saying the wrong thing?
I can think of one instance. It was more a matter of the agent steering, really, which is, a violation. But it was an old 1920s house. And you could see in the Zillow picture a foundation crack 2 inches wide. We already knew that this house had structural issues. Went down in the basement. You could see the water line where the basement had flooded 4 feet deep and had been sitting because there was a water line all the way around the foundation wall, around the water heater. On that one, the client clued into what the agent was trying to do. And that's ultimately why they walked away. But the agent called us after the inspection. We had found termite damage, and they wanted us to write a letter saying that the termite damage didn't have to be repaired. And I said, there's absolutely no way I'm writing a letter that says that. You can have a structural engineer come look at it and they can write that letter, but there's no way I'm doing it. That deal did end up going under.
Did the listing agent want that written or the buyer's agent?
The buyer's agent.
Wow.
Yeah. When I told her no, she said, well, I've been, an agent for 40 plus years and my other inspector would do this. You can go get your other inspector to do it, but I'm not doing it.
No, good for you. Yeah, they'll come back. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, not looking out for the best interests of a client for sure.
Absolutely not. Yeah. So that one tanks, but that was more of what the agent was doing.
All right. How about the flip side of that? How can an agent maintain or keep somebody on track that's starting to flip out?
Yeah. The best thing to do is to maintain your own composure. If you're calm, cool, and collected, people tend to feed off of that energy that you have. And so if you feel nervous having that conversation, the client's going to pick up on that. And in residential, especially, real estate tends to be very emotional, for the client. And, it's their house. It's got to be perfect. It's, got to be this way, that way. And so they're feeding off of that emotional energy that you bring to that conversation. And so when an agent keeps their cool about this is what we found, everything on a house can be fixed. It's just a matter of who's going to spend the time, the money, the energy. And that's where the art of negotiation really comes into during that due diligence period. And so the ones that do it really, really well, they keep that client focused on the bigger issues that really matter, those red flag items, the safety issues, where we need a structural engineer, where do we need a foundation specialist, those kind of issues, not so much burying their heads in the delayed maintenance.
What is one thing that if you had a magic wand, you would never see an agent do again?
Not read the inspection report in its entirety. The way that ours are set up, we do have a summary page, where it's just a list of the defects. And there's value in having that summary page, but there's a lot of information in that report that talks to the green areas. We looked at these, we operated this, we ran this, and all of these things turned out good. And when you look at just the summary report, you're not capturing necessarily the good things about the house. And so when you look at our reports have 3 numbers across the top and they're color coded. First one's green and it might be 185, it might be 210. That's the number of items that we actually looked at. And then out of the next one's orange, and that's going to be the bulk of our reports, and that's going to be the delayed maintenance items. The caulking that's gone bad, the paint that's fallen off the fascia, those kind of smaller things, and that's going to make up the majority of our defect statements. And then we've got the safety issues, and those are usually, on a bad day they might be 10, 15. On a good day, we might find one. Yeah.
Okay. You as the inspector have to have trust with everybody,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The buyer and the agent. How do you go about making sure that they're on your team, they know you're on their team?
I mean, the biggest thing is probably with our inspection agreement and contract. That's really the first conversation that we get to have with them once the inspection gets scheduled, and they're looking through that, and that goes through everything that we're going to look at. So when they read that, they're seeing almost not by line item, but they're seeing, we're going to go through the roof. We're going to go through the attic spaces. We're going to go through the crawl spaces. We're going to do all of these exterior things. Then we're going to go through room by room, and we're going to find everything from outlets to light switches. And so when we give off that impression of being thorough, which we are, I think that's the biggest thing that instills trust. People want an inspector that is going to be thorough, and they're not going to cut corners.
Yeah. We've been talking about the buyer end of things.
Yeah.
There's a good use for home inspectors for sellers too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big misconception. And maybe that has to do with the proximity that agents and home inspectors have within the industry. But yeah, home inspections aren't just for the buyers. They're for sellers, they're for real estate investors, they're for anybody that just wants a maintenance update on their house. And sellers, they're, especially with the way that the market's kind of going right now, 50% of houses are selling under their asking price right now. That was the latest market stat that I saw. So sellers, there's a strategy to home inspections too. Get the home inspection. You don't have to fix everything. Here in North Carolina, houses are sold as is. Nobody has to bring anything up to code, as long as it was, grandfathered in is the term. Fix a couple of those big ticket things and then turn around and it becomes an advertising point. It becomes a selling point. When the buyer comes along, you can say, hey, I had my own home inspection. Here's what they found. We already took care of some of these issues. When your inspector comes in, they're not going to find these issues because we've already fixed them. And now, instead of asking, for $15,000 in repair costs or towards closing costs, now they're asking for maybe $5,000. It kind of closes that gap between the asking price and the sell price.
Nice. And what's the downside? I know there are some agents that say they don't want to know. The homeowner doesn't want, they guide their homeowner to say no, because then you have to disclose it.
Right. You only have to disclose the material facts. So some agents, they don't want to know, they don't want to disclose. It's maybe not the most ethical behavior to do that, but the option is also full transparency. And people appreciate that full transparency going into it because it doesn't feel, as salesy, as gimmicky. It doesn't feed that narrative, that real estate agents are just salespeople. So there's that part of it too. And probably with that firehouse, had they just said something, somebody would have bought it, but they would have known that it already had this issue and it had already been fixed. But because it was undisclosed, then it became a massive issue.
So you have a phenomenal website, and tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Yeah. So I started at the end of 2020, right as COVID kind of kicked off. Well, we'd already been in COVID for the full year at that point. I actually started as a real estate agent, and I still have my real estate license. That experience that I have as a real estate agent really translates to the home inspector world because I understand the transaction process of things. So I get to have a lot of those conversations. I'm not providing brokerage services. Got to throw that disclaimer in there. But I can guide the client through the process, the next steps. I know what a DDRA is, and tell them this is what's going to happen. Now that you have my inspection report, you're going to sit down, read it, pick out the things that are most important to you, and then you're going to come with the DDRA. So agents find that.
Right. Some people may not know what that is.
Oh yeah, due diligence repair agreement.
There you go.
Yep. So that's kind of how I got into home inspections. My time as an agent, I've made all of these friendships, including you, and I had a bunch of handyman experience actually from before I was an agent. My brother and I ran a handyman business. So I had a bunch of renovation experience and really got to know how houses are built, problems that you can find. And so I combined those two and kind of pivoted into home inspections. And it's been a wild ride ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. You took off right away with your business.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been running.
Why? Why do you think you took off so fast?
The leverage of the relationships that I had, that was the biggest thing. Oh, just getting word of mouth going was a little bit easier for me just because I had all of those connections up front. Yeah, and it has paid off over the years.
And now you have 3 inspectors.
Yep, there's 3 of us all together. I've got 2 other inspectors that work for us. Together, we've done about 1,500 inspections. I do about 400 a year myself. I'm actually just about to cross the 1,000 fee paid inspections. I think on my last look, I was about 937.
Wow.
So I'll probably cross it before the end of the year.
Wow, that's impressive.
A lot of crawl spaces, a lot of attics, a lot of up and down ladders.
Talk about your website. Some reason I don't go to a lot of home inspection websites. I found it was very intriguing, some of the information you had on there. And it was almost more than I expected.
Excellent. Yeah. Hey, so our website, we've kind of broken it down a little bit, trying to appeal to the broader market. So I've got pages on there that are just for buyers. And when you go to that page, it kind of explains the inspection process. There's a couple of free resources that we offer up there, like the Safe Home Book. And then to mirror that, there's a page just for sellers where it talks about the advantages of having the home inspection before you even list the house. And there's another free book on there. I think it's Sell Your Home for More or something like that. And then we go into everything from breaking out how your inspection report, what it looks like, how to read it, areas to look at. Then we talk about the actual inspection process that we go through, kind of from start to finish. And then I've even thrown some other resources up there, like a glossary page. So if you're reading through a report and you don't know, what this inspection term might be, we try to put it in layman's terms, in plain English, so nobody's scratching their head.
Right.
But if you ever were curious, we've got a whole page of definitions that are related just to the inspection industry. And I've actually got another page that's just blog articles. A lot of that is inspection related. Some of them are borrowed from our certifying agency, Internachi, with their permission. We can repost those. But I've written quite a few myself, and I've talked about everything from code of ethics to federal trademarks to just what's going on, this week at LHI.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I really appreciated and had never seen before was you actually had sample reports.
Yeah.
And my favorite was the flip house gone wrong.
Yeah. That was actually that was the fire, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think that might have been the firehouse.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we provide those sample reports too, just as a free resource. So people can see what different types of inspections look like on different properties. They can see that they're not all just cookie cutter. There's a lot of varying different issues that we see depending on what the house is, who the builder is, who the flipper might be.
Yeah, you get to know who's who in the market pretty quickly when the house is on a certain standard.
Yeah, absolutely. When I hear that a house has been flipped, I'm probably adding about an hour to my inspection.
So do you direct your clients to the website to have a look at that so they know what to expect?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got that website backlinked in the report through all of our social media so people can come and find that. We've even got a page just for agents, transaction coordinators, and it kind of helps guide them through some of our scheduling process, how to get it booked, resources for them as well. But yeah, we try to drive as much traffic to that website as we can so it can be a resource and people know where it is.
Yeah, that was the other unique thing, having you bringing in the transaction coordinators and the agents. That speaks to your experience as an agent, and I'm sure, right? That's how that came about. I thought that was really smart.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do competitor market research, and you're absolutely right. I don't see many other home inspectors building out their websites the way that we have it. And it is a unique resource with a lot of good information in it.
What other services you offer?
We offer everything from radon testing. We can do all kinds of environmental stuff. We can do the indoor air quality, the mold. I'm certified at pool inspections. So if the house has a pool, I can include that and do it at the same time as my inspection. Ben, my counterpart, Ben, he does most of our radon stuff. He takes care of that. We'll do well and septic. We've got a guy that'll do water testing if we need it. We'll do sewer. That's a broad band of services that we can.
That's great. So you've been in almost 1,000 homes. What is the most common item that causes problems that, if addressed ahead of time, would not be a problem, would save a lot of heartache?
Probably HVAC maintenance. That's probably one of the biggest things. Just having HVAC on an annual service plan, they come out, biannually or annually. just to put their pumps on it, check refrigerant levels, clean the coils. Just having that maintenance done every year will save a ton of headaches, and it will eventually, extend the life of the units. Especially here in the Raleigh area, we still have units that are running on R22, which is a type of refrigerant that it's antiquated, it's outdated. We don't offer it anymore. Basically, those units they're still kicking. Moved on to newer refrigerant systems that don't have necessarily the life cycle that the older systems. So that maintenance becomes really important, and having that in place saves a ton of time. It saves a lot of headaches, and especially for sellers, particularly if you're looking to sell your home and you've got a new HVAC or an older HVAC system, it's going to come up on a report. That's
Yeah.
for sure. No, that's certain. That's probably one of the biggest things.
All right. So how can people get in touch with you?
So we are available almost 24/7. Our website will handle it, but legacyhomeinspections.com, or you can always call us. The office number is 984-212-9053.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for
Viewer,
having me, Jim.
get agents, subscribe, stay tuned. We always bring on informative guests like Jarett. Be your best. Have fun.